So when I asked you guys last month about how you make TBRs, the answers that I received in the comments were really kind of wide-ranging. Today we're talking about what I've got on deck for the month of August 2024, and I'm pretty fired up about it. The selections that I have on this list were quite intentional for the ones that I picked for myself, and for some others, a little bit at random and a little bit by community poll. So let's get right into it. The first book I'm reading in the month of August, I don't know, I guess John over at Talking Story is calling this our bromance buddy read month because I sent him Sandman Slim to read for August, and he sent me Patient Zero by Jonathan Mayberry, which I guess is the first book in the Joe Ledger series. I almost said Heath Ledger, and he's somebody else totally. Anyway, I don't know anything about this. It's in my Goodreads selection, and it says that it's horror, but I'm not a huge horror guy. At the same time, John is adamant that this is like his favorite anti-hero, so sign me up. I love anti-heroes. So John and I will get together either on Talking Story or over here at BellTube, and we will talk about our experience with each other's books. This is a really kind of a fun way to go about beginning August. I'm pretty excited for it. Patient Zero coming up first. When I mentioned earlier that my TBR for August is quite intentional, this is really one that I'm most intentional about. You see, I read book one several months ago. I think it was probably 4 or 5 months ago now, with the intent to start book two pretty much immediately thereafter. Where I ran into a little bit of a challenge for me, though, is that I was also reading a book a month of the Sun Eater series at the time, and this particular series that I'm going to share with you here today is a little bit challenging on the mind to read simultaneously. Yeah, if you've been a watcher of this channel at all, you know what I'm talking about. We're returning to Malazan. Malazan? Gosh, who am I? Malazan. We're returning to Malazan. Book of the Fallen. Deadhouse Gates. Trade paperback. Listen to that. I'm excited to read this. Tori Tekken, thank you so much for sending me this book, by the way. Yeah, so when it comes to Deadhouse Gates, when it comes to Malazan, I'm very, very intentionally looking forward to this because I know it's going to be a challenge. Last month in July, and when I do the recap next month when I do the recap for July next week, you're going to see that there was quite a bit of easier reads. I wanted to give my brain a bit of a break, so to speak. But yeah, starting in August, after we finish Patient Zero, it's time to get to Deadhouse Gates. I've been meaning to do this for a while. My plan is to try to get one book of Malazan done per month through book 4 before we get started with The Wars of Light and Shadow by Janny Wirtz at the beginning of 2025. I'm fired up, you guys. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about Malazan. If you finished it, if you started it, if you've been too intimidated to try it. Now would be a really good time to do it because I'm here with you doing it. And I'm only one book ahead. So cool. Let's move on to the third book. And for our third book, this is the book that we have our community members do a poll on every month. So if you've not yet, subscribed to the channel, now is a perfect time to think about doing that because it gives you access to the comments tab where we do polls. And in June, the BellTube community voted for Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell, which I really enjoyed. And in July, they voted for Never Die by Rob J. Hayes, which I will tell you about next week in my July recap. I liked it a lot. Okay, so you got a sneak peek there. Never Die was great. So now we went to August, and I put up 3 books. I put up Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I put up One Piece as a first attempt at manga here on the channel. And I put up really the big blind spot in my LitRPG reading, and that is The Wandering Inn by Pirateaba. And I also put a 4th kind of choose your own book, and if enough people in the community upvoted it, then that would win the poll. So it was really a 3 kind of plus bookish poll, and the winner as of filming this morning came in at 53% of the vote, so that's pretty overwhelming for The Wandering Inn. All right, I'm going to be doing this on audio, and Here's my commitment to you guys for voting this in. This is a tremendously long book. And the reasons why I haven't jumped into The Wandering Inn over the years are really twofold. Number one, the length of each book is a bit onerous. Some of these I think clock in at like 45 plus hours on Audible. That's quite a bit. But even more so than that, sometimes when it gets into LitRPG and we get into books that are written as web serials, and what I mean by that is the author will upload a couple of chapters at a time to various web serial sites, one of the most famous being Royal Road. And the way that they write them, and it really depends on the author, sometimes can really work for me and sometimes really do not work for me. So here is my commitment to you guys on The Wandering Inn. I'm going to start it. I am going to try to enjoy it as much as possible. There's a great chance it becomes one of my favorite series. I am crossing my fingers that is the case. However, if I run into something that I've run into before with web serials, where there's just so much repetition of the same information because the author isn't really viewing it as, a full book, but just kind of these regular uploads, if it gets really repetitive, I'm making no commitment to finishing it just because it is so long. And I have to say, I really am curiosity is certainly piqued for The Wandering Inn. My buddy Andrew over at Andrew's Wizardly Reads has been pushing on this for a long time. Matt at Matt's Book Reviews, is a huge fan of this series. So I think there's probably going to be a lot that I do like, knowing that I am such a proponent of LitRPG. All right, you guys picked The Wandering Inn for me. That's what we're doing for the third book. Let's get into the fourth book, and this one is really interesting because, I don't talk about our Patreon very much, when I make videos. I will say that we have a pretty small Patreon. I lowered the prices not that long ago, that our first tier is literally less than $2. So if you are looking for a way to support the channel in a very humble means, outside of just watching our videos, which is in and of itself plenty. Don't feel like you have to do Patreon, but I made it, I think, as accessible as possible. It's literally less than $2. And one of our levels in the Patreon involves a personal call with me each month. And yesterday I was on the phone with one of our patrons, Slay. You may have heard of him from some other channels. And I gave Slay 2 random book titles off the Spiffbo books that I have to be reading. If you're unfamiliar, Spiffbo is just the self-published fantasy blog-off competition that occurs every year. And what happens is that a bunch of indie fantasy authors submit their books. 300 are chosen at random. They get divvied up to different team judges. Some of those judges read all of the books themselves, but most other judges these days, including my judge or my team leader, Philip Chase, has really figured out a way to bring in kind of sub-judges so they are not tasked with having to read upwards of 30 or 40 books themselves every year this comes along. And I have a stack of 6 books. I've read 2 of them already. And when I was on the phone with Slay, I looked at, just the next 2 on my list. And I say, which of these 2 do you want me to read only based on the name of the title? And the title that he chose was The Warhog Paladins by somebody named Jer Patch. I don't know anything about this. I think on the cover, I don't have a physical copy, it's on Kindle. I'll throw the graphic right up over here. I think it's LitRPG, which would be really cool just because it's me, right? I mean, there's probably not a ton of LitRPG in Spiffbo to begin with, and for me to end up with one is kind of cool. And also, for you contestants who are in, my sub-judging category, do not feel like in any way that if that book is LitRPG, that all of a sudden is going to get bonus points with me. It's not. It's just kind of a nice thing since I like the genre. So that's book number 4, The Warhog Paladins by Jer Patch. I'll be reporting back, as we do the August recap, what I thought about that book. So again, the Patreon, by no means is it mandatory or anything like that. You guys, just the fact that you click on this and view it is plenty. If you like to support the channel in a small way, it's an easy way to do it. Let's talk about book number 5 on the TBR for August. All right, I do have a hardcover of this because the author sent it to me a few months ago. This is book 3 in the Hybrid Helix series, and this is Blood Reunion by the one and only J.C.M. Berne. If you are unfamiliar with the Hybrid Helix series, this is kind of like science fiction meets superhero meets comedy meets action. It sort of reads in a way intentionally like a Marvel movie, which I think is absolutely perfect for August. I'll tell you why. Deadhouse Gates, no matter how you look at it, is a dense read. It's not even 600 pages, I don't think, but having read Gardens of the Moon, I know what I'm in for the most part with Steven Erikson in terms of writing style. Some of the other books that I pointed out, I really have no idea what I'm getting myself into. The book that John Minton sent me, I have faith I'm going to like it. He wouldn't have sent it to me otherwise. The Wandering Inn, I don't know, part of me says there's a reason I've not read it yet. Part of me says maybe the community knows more than I do. But Blood Reunion, I'm pretty fired up about because I've already read 2 books in the series, and I know it's going to be what I want towards the end of the month once I get through all of these other books, particularly Deadhouse Gates. So yeah, I'll be talking about Blood Reunion as we do the August recap. Now, if there's time for a 6th book, and it kind of greatly depends on how quickly or not quickly I get through The Wandering Inn, there are 2 audiobooks that I would like to have a chance to get through, at least one of them. The first one being the new release of He Who Fights with Monsters number 11, and the second one is book 2 in Primal Hunter. I would love to be able to get through one of those as well as all of The Wandering Inn. If for whatever reason I DNF The Wandering Inn, then I'm going to get through both of those. So assuming I like The Wandering Inn as much as you guys think I'm going to, I hope there's at least room for one of those as well. And that's going to get us to the one for the road today. And our topic is going to be resilience. We talk a little bit in these one for the roads about, doing small things and, not worrying too much about big, huge results right away. But these small actions can compound and they can lead to great things. That's all correct. And I stand by that 100%. Another concept that I haven't mentioned a lot of, though, is the thought of being resilient or just resiliency, as a character trait. We read about protagonists all the time that are highly resilient, right? Bad things happen to them. They are forced into crises. They have conflicts going on. There's all kinds of reasons that a main character or side characters, or really any characters, including us, have to have some resiliency in their lives. And I challenge all of us today to try to keep that in mind and ask ourselves, what has come up recently that I have been resilient about, that I can be proud of myself over? Or what may come up, and I don't like to get into the what may and what might come up, but just sort of casting our gaze into the future a little bit. If we thought, if this comes up, what's my plan? How can I be either mentally resilient, physically resilient, or emotionally resilient, spiritually resilient, whatever that particular aspect of resilience is for you? I encourage you, as I encourage myself daily, to think about when something inevitably happens that maybe we don't want. What's our plan to stay resilient? Because these books that we read wouldn't be 600, 700, 800 pages if our main character gave up on page 6, right? They have to be able to be resilient to get through all the stuff in the story that's tough. And sometimes the stuff in our life story is tough. Resiliency. I just wanted to give a little bit of thought and attention to that today. What I'd also like you to do is to let me know in the comments what you're planning to read for August. Because here's the thing, I get so many amazing ideas from you guys as the BellTube community in the comments after these TBR videos. You all sometimes just leave me these huge laundry lists and I am blown away going, how does this person read 20 books in a month? Some of you guys read one book a month or half a book a month, and that's awesome too. But I will tell you that I absolutely get ideas from your all's TBRs, and I look forward to seeing you in the comments. I look forward to commenting back with you guys. We have lots of fun in the comments, and I will see you there. In the meantime, you guys know the drill. Stay positive, and here's your fortune.